Today I'm going to talk about 5 tasty snacks that fight cancer, can help you beat disease. Like me and you've been touched by cancer in your life somehow, whether it's a friend, a relative, yourself, then you're going to want to actually watch this video to the very end, okay? Because I want to give you some practical tips on each of these foods and how they can actually help you lower your risk of cancer. Ready? Let's dive in. To talk about that can lower your risk of cancer are walnuts. That's right, walnuts. I personally love walnuts that come in halves, right? If you're already out of the shell, and each of the half looks like a wing, that's how you always think about walnuts. In a walnut, why it's useful for cancer fighting. Like to eat walnuts, I'm going to tell you how I actually use them for my own food, but let's first talk about cancer. Alright, I'm a cancer researcher, I have cancer patients, I've diagnosed cancer, and many people over my career, so I want to actually tell you a little bit about the biology of cancer, because if you understand what we now know about cancer, it'll give you a clue on how we can actually use food to fight it. Alright? Now cancer is a dreaded disease, fear that it actually evokes because it's one of those conditions that tends to sneak up on us, and then suddenly you've got a diagnosis, then you undergo this pipe of treatment that involves chemotherapy. No wonder it's actually dreaded, okay? But things are actually changing quite dramatically, because we're now realizing that cancer is a condition that we probably form all the time in our bodies, and we just don't even know it. Tumor is made out of cancer cells, and cancer cells are basically regular cells that are undergone a mutation. Alright? So a normal cell undergoes a mutation, it's an abnormal cell, and the issue is this: our body is made out of trillions of cells. Trillions. About 40 trillions. To be copy and pasted, duplicated perfectly all the time. And that's basically why we're still here today compared to yesterday. And while we're still going to be around tomorrow compared to today, our cells are copied over and over and over. That's part of being alive. Cells is really complicated. To do that pretty well. But it's not perfect. Our body doesn't actually copy all of our cells exactly perfectly. Let me talk to you about copying and perfection, right? So imagine I were to give you a sentence and ask you to type it on a word processor or laptop 10 times, alright? Of my sentence perfectly, alright? Now if I were to ask you to copy it 100 times, alright? Make 1 or 2 mistakes in a sentence, alright? Would ask you to copy it 40 trillion times, because that's how many times our body has to copy our cells. We get 40 trillion cells. We gotta copy 40 trillion cells. For sure. Whether it's you or your body, trying to make that many copies, mistakes are going to be made. A copy of a cell turns out to be a mutation. Alright? Now how many mistakes your body makes every single day out of 40 trillion copy and pastes? Take a guess. What do you think the answer actually is? Compared to 40 trillion, but those 10,000 mistakes that are made, each one of those mistakes can become a microscopic cancer. Because cancers begin as mutations. Abnormal cells grow, they become microscopic cancers. Why do I call them microscopic cancers? And what does that mean, microscopic compared to what? Well, to a clinical cancer. A clinical cancer is what a mammogram detects when you actually see an abnormal part of the picture of the mammogram. Or maybe a woman feels a lump in her breast. And a clinical cancer is actually when you've got bleeding in a toilet bowl, and it's a colon cancer that's bleeding. Colon cancer in a colonoscopy. Clinical cancer is actually when you do a scan of your body and you've got a tumor in your liver. Alright? A microscopic cancer is one of these tiny tumor that is so small it's just a few millimeters in diameter. Kind of about the size of the tip of a ballpoint pen. Alright? Can form all the time like a pimple on your back, you might not know it. Your face probably would see, might decide to treat it. But we form pimples in our backs all the time. We don't look at her back so we don't know it's there. We'll kind of resolve the pimple, it'll kind of go away by itself. Actually what happens to these microscopic cancers that are present and growing all the time in our bodies? Alright, now, if they're growing in our bodies of copy-paste errors that occur every single day, 10,000 errors that are every day, now going to turn into a microscopic cancer, but some of them will. Well, they sit there and they try to grow 2 to 3 millimeters in diameter. That's about the size of the tip of a ballpoint pen. Then they are frozen and can't get bigger. You know why? Because they don't have a blood supply. No blood vessels are feeding a cancer like that. The reason that no blood vessels are feeding cancer like that is because our body has a natural defense system. It's called the angiogenesis defense system that helps our healthy tissues grow blood vessels and get a circulation and keeps diseased tissues like that microscopic tumor from developing of a blood supply. Alright, so that's one of our health defenses. My book Eat to Beat Disease, I teach about this health defense system and the foods that can activate it. In the online course I teach called Eat to Beat Disease course that I give, of months. But here's the key thing, does a good job to hold that microscopic tumor in check. And then another one of your defense systems. Your immune system will have immune cells that wing by. They're conducting surveillance all the time. These immune cells are in our bodies and they wing by that microscopic cancer. They see it. It's kind of like seeing a drug dealer on the corner of a peaceful neighborhood. Shouldn't be there. So what does a cop do? The police will actually interrogate the weird-looking guy, the suspicious-looking guy. Think they're suspicious enough, they're going to throw them in the back of the paddy wagon and take them away, cleaning up the neighborhood. Your immune system does okay. So the body is actually preventing blood vessels from growing to feed the cancer. So it's stuck. And 1 millimeter system, the immune system, microscopic cancer says, hey, find out that it's a microscopic cancer. And then what they do, if they actually then destroy the cancer, take it away, okay? And that's why mistakes that our body makes in copying and pasting our DNA every single day, that's why we don't develop cancer more often. Now cancer, the first question that they're going to ask is, get the cancer? Sometimes there's an answer. Family history, all kinds of things that are high risk factors for cancer. But actually my perspective is, how come we don't get cancer more often? And that's because of our body's health defense systems that keep the cancer at bay. And once you realize that their body actually has its own way of battling cancer and keeping it at bay, suddenly it actually opens the idea that maybe there's another way that we can actually use diet and lifestyle to amp up, okay? Natural health, defenses against cancer. Didn't talk about chemotherapy at all. That's even part of the equation here. Now the key, how do we know they exist? Well, tell you that, this has been established in autopsy studies of people who died of, not cancer, might have died in automobile accidents or trauma, some other cause. And some people undergo an autopsy. And what the pathologists who conduct these autopsies do is they go check every single tissue, including breast and prostate and thyroid. And this is where the discoveries were made. Studies of women who didn't die of cancer, but other causes. These autopsy women have shown that 40% of women between the ages of 40s and 50. Alright, breast. Most of these women will never be bothered by breast cancer, those tiny little cancers. Take care of it, but some of them will go on to develop cancer. But that's a key thing. 40% of women in their 40s who have no cancer, no evidence of cancer, they already have these microscopic cancers. And that's partly how we know that. What I just told you earlier about the copy, paste the mistakes, that's how we know that occurs, these microscopic cancers. My mentor doctor about this called cancer without disease. Sounds kind of weird, right? Nope, this is actually how it is. Here's another study. Autopsy studies of men in their 50s have shown that 50% of these men have microscopic cancers in their prostate, but most of them are going to develop clinical prostate cancer. Why? Their immune system will actually wing by, spot them, right, so basically keeps them small. By the way, in that lab, a tumor and you prevent blood vessels from ever getting to it, can't grow more than 2 or 3 millimeters in diameter. Again, that's about the size of the tip of a ballpoint pen. Super tiny. But once you allow blood vessels to touch that cancer, to feed it, bring it oxygen, in the lab we've shown that that's enough to grow that tumor 16,000 times in just 2 weeks. Alright, so angiogenesis, vessels growing towards the blood vessels. Angio is blood, genesis how they grow, all of our healthy blood vessels. But occasionally, that system and grow blood vessels, it'll grow 16,000 times in 2 weeks. Alright, that's why angiogenesis is a trigger for tumor growth. But as long as your body can actually keep it small, cut off the blood supply, then our immune system wings by and takes them out. And that's why the 40% of women in their 40s or the 50% of men in their 50s, that's why their own health defenses protects them against those microscopic cancers, and their breasts and the prostate from ever growing up. Alright, people 70 years and older. And what that study showed is that 100% of people above the age of 70 have microscopic cancers in their thyroid gland. Now the thyroid gland is kind of just in your neck, just above, sort of like the sternum. It's an endocrine gland. It releases thyroid hormone. You get older, thyroid cancer is really but, Actually, it won't become a clinical cancer, so all these things were discovered accidentally during autopsy studies, and it just shows how common cancer actually is in the body. Cancer without disease. Defenses that actually knock out and take away these cancers and keep them from ever growing and becoming a problem. And that's why we're actually healthy, right? Of these health defenses. But if any of these health defenses fail, all right, then it gives cancer an edge, a chance to actually overcome the blood vessel system and grow their own blood vessels, overcome the immune system, and if you actually have inflammation around, inflammation is kind of like pouring gasoline onto the embers of a fire. It's going to cause it to rear right up and start to actually become very ferocious and fearsome, right? Hey there, I have a valuable resource that you won't want to miss. It's all about the 5 signs that your legs and your feet may be warning you about poor health. Your legs and feet can give you important clues about your overall health, especially when it comes to your circulation. If you want to learn more about these warning signs and how to take action, click on the link below the video to access this essential information. Now let's get back to the video. So what do we want to do when it comes to food for cancer prevention? Well, ramp up, okay? Pretty good, let's make it better. Bit of edge that we can get. And our health defenses helps to beat back cancer. And if you actually are somebody who's already struggling with cancer, you really need your health defenses because they are pushing back against the disease every single moment of your life. Alright, what to do is to lower inflammation. Remember I told you inflammation is like gasoline that you put on the embers of a fire. Boom, to actually go way up. So you gotta lower inflammation, right? So that's a super petted. And you also want to raise your immune system so you've got better surveillance. More immune cells can see that cancer and start to take them out. And by the way, here's another thing you want to do. Remember I told you that the copy-paste problem in our body, well, the formation of these microscopic cancers due to mutations. Remember, and mutations are errors of our DNA. That's a genetic mutation. And so our body has its own ways to prevent mutations in our DNA, or to fix the mutations that already occurred. That's our DNA health defense. And again, chapter in my book, Eat to Beat Disease. Preventing cancers from being fed by blood vessels, starving a tumor by cutting up its blood supply. And by the way, if you can actually wipe out cancer stem cells, let me explain that to you. Our body is made out of different organs, and our organs are sort of differentiated, meaning fully formed cells, right? But your body has the ability to renew and replenish the cells using stem cells. And you've probably heard of stem cells through regenerative medicine, but this is actually real. So stem cells can kind of rebuild tissues. Now cells, right? But cancer is very, very sneaky, have their own cancer stem cells. And these cancer stem cells and if help to regenerate the cancer, if you actually cut it out or treat it. Alright, when you hear people saying, oh, well it's the stem cells that actually help them regrow and establish themselves. That's what recurrence of cancer is all about. Alright, so all those things that I told you want to do, you want to kill cancer stem cells, cut off the blood supply, feeding a cancer, body repair the DNA, you want to lower the inflammation, and you want to boost the immune system. Alright, food can actually help to do all those things. You guessed it, walnuts. Alright, body's health defenses so that you can actually protect yourself against cancer. So it lowers a risk low. Walnut fits the bill as a cancer defense system. Now source of plant-based omega-3 fatty acids. These are healthy fats. And guess what healthy fats do? The power of your immune cells. These cells are called T cells. Alright, they're just part of our immune system. Wipe out cancer. And eating wellness gives our T cells a real boost. Alright, now walnuts also contain a natural bioactive, a polyphenol called elagitannins. Alright, one molecule. It's a group of molecules. When we eat a walnut, these compounds get into our bloodstream and they can help cut off the blood supply. But these elagitannins also partly tumble down our gut, right into our colon, where our gut bacteria actually is and where our healthy gut bacteria lives. Alright, the gut bacteria convert the elagitannins in walnuts into something called urolithin. urolithins. Urolithins. Alright, and guess what? Anti-inflammatory and antioxidant effects. Protects your DNA by antioxidant and prevents cancer from flaring up by lowering inflammation. Alright, omega-3 and the elagitannins. Now well, it's been studied in human research. Marshall University looked at people who ate walnuts and they looked at the risk of breast cancer. So here's what they did. These are women they enrolled into the study who are already getting a biopsy because there's a suspicion they've got breast cancer, right? And so these are women who are already getting a biopsy. Now one group actually were given 2. One group actually got 2 ounces of walnuts a day for 2 weeks, alright, leading up to their biopsy. Group didn't get any walnuts, alright, and what happens when the researchers look the biopsies? So don't forget they got the walnuts a couple of weeks before the biopsy, and when the researchers looked at the breast tissue from the people who were eating walnuts, the walnut eaters found gene expression, alright, tumor growth, and the walnut eaters had more DNA protective genes that turned down cancer cell growth in their breasts, in their breast biopsy. That the walnut eaters had genes for cancer cell growth, the genes that would actually spark the cancer cell to grow, they were turned down by eating walnuts. So eating walnuts turned down the genes that drive cancer cell growth, and at the same time the same researchers found that eating walnuts in those people protected against cancer by turning on anti-cancer genes, genes that actually are designed to actually combat cancer. So shields up, beating back cancer genes are on, and the genes for fueling cancer growth go down, everything in the right direction. Alright, now there's another study that looked at 76,000 women. This was called the Nurses' Health Study. Study actually looked at women who were consuming walnuts regularly, and they found that women who regularly ate wellness, like just part of the routine diet, risk of developing breast cancer. Alright, women who rarely or never ate walnuts. Alright, now the researchers thought about the effect, the protective effect of walnuts they said probably due to the high level of omega-3s. Alright, but I can tell you based on what my research shows, that it's not just the omega-3s, it's a dietary fiber, androgenic effects of the oligotannins, it is the anti-inflammatory effects of the omega-3s. Everything works together to lower risk, and that's where found true in the lab, can apply to people in large clinical studies and observational studies as well. Just taking a look at does it work in people, seems like it does. One more thing about wellness, walnuts actually have a substance that can kill cancer stem cells. Those are those pesky cells I told you about that help the cancer come back, the baby cancer cells. Well, eating walnuts actually has a substance that kills the cancer stem cells, so the cancer won't come back. Studied in the lab as well as some people with colorectal cancer. Alright, now I'm telling you there's like a study of 700 people with colon cancer, stage 3 colon cancer. They're getting into regular treatments and ensure that those people who actually were eating regularly, a fistful of walnuts, a couple of times a week, they had like a 50% lower risk of dying from their colon cancer. So it's actually adding walnuts to boost the health defenses while you're getting regular treatment. Alright, done like all the major medical centers around the country, Harvard and MD Anderson, all these really centers looked at this event, and they actually published it and presented it at the American Society for Clinical Oncology. So this was actually in front of a mainstream audience of cancer researchers as well. Alright, so walnuts, good. There's a lot of different ways, so first of all I like to roast them lightly in order to bring out their flavor. Right, bulk walnuts. Now ones that are just I don't like them when they're are pre-crushed up already. I'll do the crushing. The walnuts that are cast iron pan, you don't need any oil at all. Iron pan on top of the range. Alright, it on low. Alright, you're not cooking the walnuts. You're holding the handle of the pot. Back and forth. Alright, toast up the walnuts. That way you can start smelling their flavor after, so as soon as you get that nice fragrance and they're crisped up. Alright, the flame. Take them off the flame. Cool down. Alright, over your yogurt or sprinkle some in your oatmeal. You're taking yogurt, probiotic food, or oatmeal, and useful bioactives for gut microbiome. Alright, and speed up healing. Now you can sprinkle some walnuts on top of it. And now you've actually added a cancer preventative substance on top of something that's already good for gut health and good for heart health. And now you've got good for cancer health as well. Now if you want to actually aim towards longevity, this is a great way to do it, and now you can actually sprinkle a little bit of anti-cancer or cancer-fighting food right on top of that. Works well together from a taste and flavor perspective. I would probably cut up a little bit of fruit on top of that just to give the walnuts and fruits some flavor. Now if you say what would be a good fruit with walnuts, fruit especially whenever it's in season, walnuts work together. I think of walnuts as in the fall, so doesn't have to be fresh. You could take dried cranberries, dried blueberries, and walnuts. Those are all good combinations that you can actually put together. Right itself, by the way, contains substances that are naturally anti-inflammatory. Put out that fire. Alright, walnuts is in a pesto. Now if you like Italian food, right? Pesto is super simple. It is extra virgin olive oil, it's garlic, it's basil leaves, and you literally go into a mortar and pestle and grind that into a paste, alright? And then if you cook some pasta, I like to use trophy, which is very TROFIE, type of shape of pasta, where pesto was developed in Liguria. You take a dollop of that pesto you just made and throw it onto the trophy, mix it around, it's got the extra virgin olive oil, the basil, the garlic, all good for you, alright, which I also love pine nuts, crushed toasted walnuts instead. Now you've got a walnut pesto. And by the way, there are different kinds of walnut pestos out there, if you want to look around for them, but you can make your own, and that's a great way.
delicious way to be able to get walnuts into your diet, as a way that you might not naturally think of, right? So, and by the way, pesto, I suggest organic whole wheat pasta, alright? It's a little brown, a little bit more nutritious as well, and it's got those bioactives from the whole grain, better dietary fiber, walnut pesto. On top of that, basically a vegetarian dish. Alright, that lights up all your body's health defenses. You want to put some ground cheese like Parmesan, Reggiano cheese, Gran Padano,